wonder why I'm still sat in my cell here, going through the same shit year after year. Gotta keep up, keep strong, don't shed a tear. Show them a soldier, don't show the fear. Yeah, they abolished it, it took them how long? Took them 12 fucking years to admit that they're wrong. Now thousands of people imprisoned, lives with no hope, struggling it, finding it hard to cope. Just a step from the rope round the throat and the choke. Tears soak up to the suicide note. These people in parliament picking lives apart while they pocket the profits and then they hide in the dark.
Now when you hear prison escape, you might think of dramatic Hollywood movies. But Joe Outlaw's rooftop protests from high-security prisons like Frankland and Strangeways weren't about freedom in the traditional sense. They were a desperate, very public plea for justice, not just for himself, but for nearly 3,000 other people stuck in a legal limbo that even the Justice Secretary calls a stain on the system. So, what exactly are IPP sentences? Imagine being sent to prison for a crime, serving your minimum tariff, essentially the punishment part of your sentence, and then just staying there, indefinitely. No release date, no clear path out, just waiting for a parole board to decide you're no longer a risk. Sounds harsh, right? Well, that's exactly what IPP, or Imprisonment for Public Protection, was. Introduced in 2005, IPP sentences were designed for serious offenders whose crimes didn't warrant a life sentence, but who were deemed a significant risk to the public. The idea was to hold them until they were no longer a danger. But in practice, it became a nightmare. People ended up serving years, sometimes decades, beyond their original tariff, often for relatively minor offenses. The system was quickly criticized as unclear and inconsistent. And in 2012, after just 7 years, IPP sentences were abolished. You heard that right, abolished. But here's the kicker. Abolition didn't mean everyone on an IPP sentence was automatically released. Far from it. As of September last year, there were still over 2,900 people like Joe Outlaw languishing in prison on these very same sentences. Over 1,200 of them have never even been released, while others have been recalled to custody. This brings us back to Joe Outlaw. Born Chris Hordosi, he changed his name to Outlaw while inside. In 2011, he was given an IPP sentence for robbing a takeaway with an imitation firearm while high on drugs. His tariff was 9 years. By now, he's served 12. 12 years later, he's still in prison, fighting a system he believes is rigged against release. Joe's protests are legendary. On the summer solstice in 2023, the hottest day of the year, he broke through a caged exercise yard at HMP Frankland, known as Monster Mansion due to its dangerous inmates, and got onto the roof. A local photographer captured him sunbathing in his underpants, negotiating with riot police. This wasn't his first time. Just months before, in April, he'd spent 12 hours on the roof of HMP Manchester, or Strangeways, in the pouring rain, writing "Free IPZ" in gloss paint. He's an expert climber, honed from escaping care homes as a youth. But these weren't joyrides. They were desperate acts born from despair. Joe claims he was facing horrid levels of abuse and neglect at Frankland, and that the alternative to protesting was suicide. He alleges he's seen 270 other IPP prisoners die in jail, 81 by suicide, and even some committing murder, believing they're in for life anyway. Joe himself has attempted suicide. Think about that. The mental toll of having no release date, no certainty, no hope is immense. Joe describes a system where goalposts moved again, with new courses being created every time prisoners completed existing ones, making release an ever-moving target. The parole board, he argues, is inherently risk-averse, treating those in for fights or robbery like they are murderers. After his Frankland protest, Joe was moved to HMP Belmarsh, a Category A jail. He claims he's been in total isolation on a special unit opened just for him for nearly 6 months, seeing no other inmates. He believes this is to silence his activism. The independent monitoring board at Belmarsh even called his situation, and that of other IPP prisoners, inhumane. The calls for reform are growing. Even the current Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, has called IPP sentences a stain on the justice system. Last month, Chalk announced reforms to cut the license period for released IPP prisoners from 10 to 3 years. But for those still inside, like Joe, it's unclear if this offers a real pathway to freedom. Joe knows some people will look at his actions and think he's bringing it on himself, but he challenges us to put ourselves in his shoes. What would you do, he asks, when the people who are meant to be helping you are the ones who are abusing you, when no one around you cares or treats you with respect? He paints a picture of corruption, with drones delivering drugs to prisons and officers turning a blind eye to rampant smartphone use, which ironically allowed him to build a following with his protest raps. The prison service maintains that those still in custody were deemed a high risk by a judge, and that the independent parole board must decide if they are safe to leave. They point to the reduction in IPP prisoners by 3/4 and improved access to rehabilitation. But for the nearly 3,000 still inside, especially those like Joe Outlaw who have served far beyond their original tariffs, the fight for justice continues. Joe Outlaw's story is a stark reminder that our justice system, even with the best intentions, can have devastating human consequences. It raises critical questions about punishment, rehabilitation, and the very definition of justice. What do you think about IPP sentences and Joe Outlaw's protests? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe for more deep dives into complex stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.